Yeah, where the Great Falls, the Little Theater.
The original.
Yeah.
It is.
I took a photograph too, didn't it? I don't know the picture, a photograph.
That's a photograph.
Did you carry it?
That's a photograph. No, it's a photograph. It was reproduced in the Lewiston newspaper. Well, around 1907 is where I got it.
Yeah.
And so it's not a very good photograph. It's kind of, but it was.
It's an early
I took the
photograph.
picture from the. Yes. Now this
Sketch.
yeah, this is a drawing, and which is very similar to it. But that is a drawing. I felt I should include that because it was done contemporaneously as well by Andrew Giddings, who wrote this diary and wrote extensively every day about what he thought about and what was going on. And he, in the margins, he would make these pictures, draw these pictures in the margins of his diary, and it's wonderful to go through that. And so there was, he's calling it Peking Academy, which was one of the names for some reason that was given to the location, and called it Peking Academy. So, okay, then after Edward Little's death, the enterprise was renamed Edward Little Institute by the trustees of the academy. And then when Auburn decided it wanted a public school, the trustees of the academy signed over the property to the city, and on the conditions, on several conditions. And the conditions were they would erect a statue, and it was a statue done by a very prominent sculptor, Franklin Simmons of originally from Sebattis, and he's the one who did the soldier in the city park, in Lewiston City Park, also the seated Longfellow in Longfellow Square in Portland, and other sculptures in Washington D.C. and so on. I guess he was in Rome when he actually did it, and so it was brought here. And the other condition, there's a few conditions, but one interesting one was that there would be a portrait that would be commissioned with regard to for Edward Little, and it would be hung in a prominent room in the institute, in the new high school. But it burned. The portrait burned when the high school burned. And so D.D. Coombs was commissioned to make it a portrait, and that is in the office of the high school now. Okay. Edward Little and his family founded what became the High Street Congregational Church. However, initially, this new church was met in schoolhouses or in Edward Little's house. And Edward Little often was the one who was the preacher for the congregation of maybe 10 people. And so they didn't have enough funds to pay a regular minister. And Edward Little now, at this point in the 1820s, does not have money of his own. Remember, his house is being built on his father's dime, although his father is down there in Newbury and doesn't really know what's going on. And Edward Little doesn't have money of his own, much money of his own, to be a philanthropist for this church. So it's only after the father dies, in 1830, that the church now can hire, because of Edward Little's generosity, can hire a full-time minister, and also build a church on the corner of what is now Main and Drummond Streets in Auburn. And the people who contributed to this church were Edward Little, his 3 sons, and his son-in-law, and one other man. And so they had enough money to build a church. And this was, again, I got this from a newspaper, but somebody did a drawing using this, and so we have a similar kind of drawing that I found and thought, well, include that as well in my presentation. And so they ultimately this church moved to High Street, and when they renovated again, well, it moved and built a new building, and then when they renovated in the late 1890s, they installed stained glass windows, and Edward Little's grandson, one of his grandsons, contributed the $100 for the installation of this window. And so it's still there in High Street, Congo Church. And I encourage you to go in and take a look in the daytime so that you can see the stained glass window. And when that church did burn in 1985, they saved many of the windows and installed them in the new structure. Okay, Edward Little also was involved in the development of infrastructure and the mills. The Little family owned the first lumber, grist, shingle, and fulling, and textile mills. Brother Michael, Edward Little's brother Michael, was initially in charge, but Michael suffered alcoholism, and Edward, liquor or rum was very much the beverage of choice at the time, but there was abuse, and Edward had to take over, along with Michael's son, Josiah Stover Little, who was always called Stover, which helped. There are all of these Josiahs in the family tree, and I always was very careful to figure out which one was being talked about. When they ventured in, okay, so they had all of these little mills. Here are the falls, and then there are all of these little mills, and this is the road to the bridge. All of these mills that the Littles owned. When they ventured into textiles, they hired Dean Fry to manage them, and then when he committed suicide, he was succeeded by his 2 sons, John M. Fry and William R. Fry. It's not the senator. That's the senator's uncle. The senator is William P. Fry. Then the Littles and the Frys organized the Lewiston Falls Manufacturing Companies. The directors were President Edward Little. Samuel Pickard was also a director, who was a son-in-law. And then the 2 Frys, John M. and William R., and John A. Griggs. Then they embarked on an ambitious plan to organize the Great Androscoggin Falls Mill, Dam, Locks, and Canal Company. three sons, Thomas, Edward, and Josiah, Edward T. and Josiah, and son-in-law Samuel Pickard. So this is clearly a family business, family affair. However, ultimately they needed more capital, so they reorganized as the Lewiston Water Power Company, which ultimately was taken over by Benjamin Bates and et al. Had to get the investors from the Boston area to do the mills. So Edward, as I think I said, died in 1849, and it was just there in 1847, 48, 49 that Benjamin Bates came along and they built the canals. So I think Edward probably saw the canals constructed and even the start of Bates Mill number 1, but Bates Mill number 1 went into operation in 1850 after his death. So he was right there at the beginning of the major industrialization. Okay, earlier Edward had been the president in most years of the toll bridge company that constructed the bridge in 1823. Actually, while he was still in Portland, he was involved in that. And here's the bridge. Here's Auburn. Let's see now. No, it's not Auburn yet. It's in the early 1830s that this was painted. You can see there's not much in Lewiston. It's the Harris Farm out here in Lewiston. Also, he was an early supporter of the railroads, and the railroads were extremely important in terms of attracting the mills to bring the raw material in and then to put the finished product out.
Yes, question, what prompted the citizen to name it Auburn? What was wrong with Danville and Gloucester?
East Minot became Auburn in 1842, and the story is that James Goff, the state legislator involved in this, his wife was a fan of a poet, Goldsworthy. William? Goldsworthy, anyway, was his last name. And he wrote a poem called Auburn, the loveliest village on the plain. That was the first line of the poem. James Goff's wife was a fan of this poem. She loved that poem. And they decided, well, why not? Although, ironically, most of the poem concerns the devastation of this Auburn, loveliest village on the plain, because of the industrialization that had been occurring in Scotland.
Interesting.
And Auburn, there was no town in England, Scotland, by that name. But there were several other Auburns in the country, in the United States, that had that similar story, somewhat similar story that's named for this poem.
What did you say about Scotland?
Pardon?
What did you say about Scotland now?
Well, the Goldsworthy was concerned about the way that industrialization was devastating small towns and so forth as people moved out to go to the mills and work and so forth. So that's the story.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The mills that you showed us a couple of slides ago, where are they located?
Okay.
I saw the slides, but is it where we would go, like Lincoln Street to be today, or Main Street in Auburn? Or?
Okay. I'm I'm sorry. Okay, this is Lewiston. This is all of Lewiston here. So here is Main Street, Lewiston, and then it goes across, and it's going across the bridge to Auburn. So it's off, as you're going from Lewiston to Auburn, it's off to the right,
Sort of where Libby Mill.
where the Libby Mill was. Yeah, it's all here, the Libby Mill, the Coward Mill. So they had all of these little mills at this point. So here, and here are the falls. And there is this natural bay, I guess you'd call it, and this was an early canal that they were trying to dig. But then eventually Benjamin Bates would say, well, this is great. We have a kind of a natural, I'm going to call it a bay, and then you can start putting your canals this way, and then the water will run downhill as you get through the mills. Okay, so you see where it is now? Okay, so this is Main Street. Here's Colonel Fry's house, John M. Fry, and this is where Senator William P. Fry was born, in this house. And then there's a blacksmith shop here. I think that's, well, somewhere here.
That's the Fry house is
And
still
what
there,
kind
right?
of mills were
But
they?
his house is still there, right? in the corner?
No, oh, no. No, everything on this side of Main Street is gone.
What's the house on the corner of Fry Street there?
Oh, on Fry Street
Yeah,
in Lewiston,
yeah.
that is the senator's house,
Senator, all right.
Senator William P.
I know there was
Fry.
one there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the senator was born here, but he built that house. And then Colonel Fry, John M., did move up Main Street, and it is now, there's a sign out front of the Baptist church. And then a little